The engine was still running, the snow falling harder. In the driver's seat, a woman frozen in silence. No movement, no response. Outside the SUV, only one set of footprints, leading into the woods. In the heart of a New Jersey snowstorm, what looked like a tragic accident was about to expose something far more sinister. This wasn't just a death. It was the beginning of a terrifying investigation. Jonathan Nice was born on May 26, 1950, in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. The oldest of 4 boys in a home where nothing came easy. With mouths to feed and bills that always outpaced income, the family lived modestly. Every small comfort had to be earned. Jonathan, quiet and often sick from asthma, found escape not in friends, but in books. While his brothers wrestled and ran, he buried himself in science and medicine, dreaming not of wealth, but of purpose. He was smart, no doubt, but there was always something distant about him, something withdrawn. As the Nice family eventually upgraded to a larger ranch-style home, Jonathan's health took a turn for the better. He even joined the school's basketball team. A quiet presence on the court, polite but never quite connected. He was friendly, yes, but always a little distant. He dated here and there, but relationships seemed foreign to him, like he was mimicking what others felt rather than truly experiencing it. His true devotion was always to structure, to books, to discipline, to control. To his devout Catholic parents, Jonathan was the perfect son, obedient, focused, and utterly predictable. Sundays were for Mass. Every step of his life was measured, rehearsed, and that perfection would one day crack. Jonathan's academic journey took him to Temple University in Philadelphia, where he pursued his growing obsession with pharmacology. Determined to stand on his own, he worked through school, pushing forward with a kind of silent intensity. His postdoctoral research brought him west to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and the Kenneth Norris Cancer Center, where his name began to circulate as a brilliant, tireless researcher. It was during these demanding years that he met Sylvie, a devout Orthodox Jewish woman. On paper, they were opposites, but something about their shared discipline, their quiet ambition, pulled them together. They married while still students, renting a small home next to Jonathan's parents. A life defined by structure, study, and polite affection. But under the surface, strain grew. Religious holidays exposed irreconcilable differences. What once felt like balance began to feel like distance. Family dinners turned quiet. Rituals became tension points. Slowly, quietly, the marriage began to erode. 7 years after they married, Jonathan and Sylvie quietly divorced. No scandal, no conflict, just 2 lives drifting in separate directions. Professionally, Jonathan thrived. He built a solid reputation in pediatric care, known for his soft voice, gentle hands, and unwavering patience with sick children. But the lab always called louder. He wasn't just interested in healing. He was obsessed with creating solutions no one else had. Medicines, discoveries, legacy. But as Jonathan entered middle age, something deeper began to gnaw at him. The absence of a family. He wanted a wife, children, something he could shape from scratch. In the early 1990s, that longing took an unexpected turn. While eating in a hospital cafeteria, he met a young Filipino woman whose kindness left an impression. She wasn't available, already in a relationship, but before leaving, she handed him a copy of the Manila Times, pointing to a small ad placed by someone else, a woman named Michelle Rivera. The ad was innocent, a request for a pen pal to practice English, but it came with a photo. And that image arrested Jonathan. He was captivated. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, and thousands of miles away. But he saw possibility, and he acted immediately. His first letter included a photo of himself, old but polished. He also told Michelle he was 30. He was nearly 40. That lie, small but intentional, didn't slow him down. Letter by letter, he built a fantasy. He wrote about the future, about love, about a life they'd never lived. Marriage was mentioned long before they ever met in person. To Jonathan, it wasn't just a dream. It was a design. Michelle Rivera was born in November 1969, the fifth of 7 children, in a weathered fishing village skirting the edge of Manila Bay. Her childhood home sat on stilts above the tide, built from wood and willpower. No electricity, no plumbing. But within those fragile walls, there was warmth, there was love, especially from her father, a steady man who made her feel safe in a world that often wasn't. Michelle was quiet, gentle. She didn't command attention, but she left an impression. There was grace in how she moved, in how she listened, and there was hope in her heart, hope for more than what her village could offer. Like many young women born into poverty, she dreamed of elsewhere. She dreamed of the United States. At 16, Michelle did the unthinkable. She earned admission to a prestigious school for administration and business. It was the kind of opportunity that could rewrite her future. But hope, once again, collided with hardship. After just 1 semester, money ran out. She withdrew quietly. Her parents promised they'd find a way to send her back. But Michelle didn't wait. She moved in with an aunt in a nearby town and found work as a waitress. That town bordered an American military base, a place where foreign faces were common and English echoed in the streets. She realized if she wanted to get to America, she'd need the language, but formal lessons were too expensive. So she did what she could with what she had. She placed a tiny ad in the Manila Times, asking for an English-speaking pen pal. That ad changed everything. Thousands of miles away, Jonathan Nice saw her words, saw her photo, and wrote back. He was nearly 40, but told her he was 30. He sent an old photo, clean-shaven, smiling, calculated. He painted himself as the American dream. The letters started slowly, then grew longer, deeper, more intimate. He wrote of marriage, of children, of a quiet, shared life in the US. And for a girl raised on hope and sacrifice, Jonathan's words must have felt like a lifeline, not just a chance, a destiny. Neither Jonathan nor Michelle told their families the full story. What they had was secret, a long-distance romance spun from letters, photos, and dreams. But after just a few months of writing, Jonathan made a decision that would change both their lives. He booked a flight to the Philippines. He was going to marry her. He had never seen her in person, never heard her voice, but he was certain. In his mind, this wasn't just love. It was a plan. Their first meeting happened in June of 1990. Michelle had prepared herself for excitement, for the man in the photo, the promise in the letters. But when Jonathan stepped off the plane, reality struck. He looked nothing like his picture. He was older, much older, and the lies were suddenly, painfully clear. The age, the photo, the carefully crafted illusion. And still, she said yes. Jonathan was polite, generous. He charmed her father and promised to send money to support the family. For Michelle, standing there in the middle of a poor village, maybe this was the only door that would ever open. Maybe she convinced herself the future could still work, even if the foundation had cracks. So, on June 11th, 1990, Just days after meeting him face to face, she became Michelle Nice, a wedding ring and a stranger. Even on his marriage certificate, Jonathan couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. He shaved 8 years off his age, claiming he was born in 1958. The lie was simple, almost reflexive by now. Not one member of Jonathan's family attended the wedding. In fact, they didn't even know it had happened. He told no one. He feared the whispers, feared they'd call her a mail-order bride, question his judgment, or worse, see through him. So he and Michelle built a story, a cover. When she arrived in the United States, they would tell people they'd met in Hawaii at a medical conference where Jonathan had supposedly been a speaker. It sounded romantic, respectable, entirely untrue. The visa took nearly a year to process. During that time, their connection existed only on paper. Long letters stretched across oceans, trying to maintain the illusion. And then, on April 19th, 1991, Michelle boarded a plane for the first time in her life. She landed in a country she had never seen, to begin a life with a man she barely knew. They settled in North Carolina. Jonathan worked as a research professor at East Carolina University. In those early months, everything felt like an extended honeymoon. They traveled through California, walking palm-lined streets, smiling for photos. But behind the images was something quieter, something beginning to settle into place, a life built on secrets. Back in North Carolina, Jonathan introduced Michelle as his wife. The Hawaii story was shared, and most people accepted it without question. Those who doubted stayed silent. Jonathan looked happier than he ever had before. But Michelle, thousands of miles from everything she had ever known, was starting to understand just how alone she really was. By 1992, the Nice family seemed picture perfect. Michelle gave birth to their first son, Alex, in January. Then, in November 1993, Trevor arrived. Jonathan was elated. He filled his office with framed photos, tiny footprints, hospital bracelets, sleepy-eyed newborns. He often said Michelle had given him everything, a family, a purpose beyond the lab. But beneath the warmth and gratitude, fear had begun to fester. Michelle was stunning, outgoing, and effortlessly magnetic. Everything Jonathan wasn't, and he knew it. Quietly, he became possessive, jealous, afraid someone might steal her away. Still, his professional life soared. In 1995, Jonathan took a leap and founded Epigenesis Pharmaceuticals, a biotech company focused on cutting-edge genetic research. His passion was asthma, the disease that had haunted his childhood. He didn't just want to treat it, he wanted to cure it at the source. In time, he developed a breakthrough inhalable gene therapy, EPI 2010. The research landed in Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. It was revolutionary. The medical world took notice. Investors rushed in. One wired $5 million. Annual budgets exploded to $11 million. Jonathan became a public face of hope, speaking at biotech conferences, pitching on national stages. The spotlight suited him. He was no longer the quiet, awkward academic. Now, he was a visionary, a founder, a man in control. In March 1998, Michelle gave birth to their third child, a daughter named Samantha. On paper, Jonathan Nice had it all: a loving wife, 3 beautiful children, and a company changing the world. But behind the glossy images and growing wealth, things at home were shifting. Jonathan was gone more and more, spending a week each month on the road. And when he wasn't traveling, he was buried in research, fundraising, expansion. By 2000, Epigenesis moved its headquarters to New Jersey. The family followed, into a sprawling estate in Hopewell Township. It looked like the American dream, perfected. But Michelle felt none of it. She had left behind her friends, her support system in North Carolina. Now she was isolated in a cold, unfamiliar town, raising 3 children largely on her own, while Jonathan disappeared into his work. The house was big, but Michelle felt small inside it, alone, unseen. And something in her spirit quietly began to crack. At first, Michelle's visits to the gym were innocent, just a way to stay fit, maybe meet new people. But Jonathan saw them as a threat, a crack in the illusion of control he had so carefully built. In response, he constructed a private gym inside their sprawling home, outfitting it with expensive equipment, mirrors and weights. Michelle thanked him, but to her, it wasn't a gift. It was confinement. Years later, she would tell a relative it felt like she was living in a golden cage, beautiful on the outside, but locked shut from within. By 2001, Michelle was searching for something, purpose, independence, maybe even herself. She took on a personal project, transforming the overgrown yard into a formal garden. Jonathan agreed, despite the $50,000 price tag. A team of landscapers arrived, and one man stood out, Miguel de Jesus. His warmth, his ease, his attention. It was different from what Michelle had known for years. At first, it was just friendship. But soon, that line began to blur. Meanwhile, Jonathan's world was crumbling. The drug that had made him famous, EPI 2010, was beginning to fail. What once looked like a miracle gene therapy wasn't delivering in clinical trials. Investors backed away, and then came the dot-com crash, dragging biotech down with it. Board members turned against him. In March 2003, they forced him out of the very company he built. Just like that, Jonathan Nice, the scientist, the founder, the visionary, was stripped of everything. His drug was shelved, his career shattered. But Jonathan told no one, not his children, not even Michelle. He kept wearing the mask of success, told neighbors he was working on a children's book, claimed to be consulting remotely. But behind closed doors, the silence grew heavier. Jonathan began drinking heavily. The man who once scheduled his days down to the minute now wandered the house, lost in thought, slurring under his breath. His mood shifted fast, from quiet despair to simmering anger. Michelle, already emotionally distant, grew more certain about what she wanted, and it wasn't this. Her bond with Miguel intensified. What began as kind conversation had evolved into a full affair. Miguel was married too, with 2 daughters, but that didn't stop them. They found moments. They made space for each other. Michelle had spent over a decade trapped in someone else's version of the perfect life. With Miguel, she felt seen again, loved. Jonathan didn't notice at first. His pride, his panic, his unraveling career kept his attention elsewhere. But over time, things stopped adding up. Unexplained calls, unfamiliar numbers on the phone bill, missed dinners, excuses. Jonathan began to watch, and when he started piecing it together, what he found pushed him over a line he could never come back from. Michelle's death stunned the community. At first glance, it could have been a tragic accident, but nothing about the scene made sense. Her purse was found untouched in the front seat, her makeup bag still zipped, her coat partially unbuttoned. There was no evidence of a struggle inside the vehicle, but the medical examiner confirmed what detectives already suspected. Michelle had been murdered.